So there are two voids which I forgot to mention in my previous video, neither of which are available to us currently, and they're both theoretical, so they're voids which may not even exist in the future. So I thought that's probably why I left them out, but it is interesting to note that there's the possibility in the future where all the universe will become just one infinite void. You'll have either the heat death of the entire universe, in which case everything from stars to photons to even black holes will eventually die out, and the only thing left will be, stray planets, dead stars that have eventually turned into black dwarves. Just nothingness. And then where there is something, it's just, you know, dark planets and dead stars shrouded in darkness. So it's as bad as like doom metal as you could possibly get. Just infinite nothingness and infinite darkness. And then there's the big rip in which you don't even have, those celestial bodies. You just have nothingness. You just have subatomic particles and photons just scattered through an infinitely expanding space with no visible light to really give you any idea of where you are. And these two voids are perhaps the purest idea. They embody the purest idea of a void, because with the last two cases, they were apparent voids, I guess you could say. They're, this is excluding death. Um, just the two cosmological voids, which I spoke of last time, black holes and the cosmic horizon, the horizon of the visible universe. So in this case, you have two actual voids, in which case you have nothing, no light, no actual tangible thing that you can actually see in front of you. In the case of the heat death, you have, physical objects, but they're so shrouded in darkness that it might as well be just, lost. You're just lost in the abyss. And then in the case of the big rip, you actually are. If you were to be teleported to this point in time, it's far, far in the future. And so these are probably the most pure voids, with the big rip being the most pure, purest idea. It embodies the void in the most perfect sense. But they're also so far in the future, where it's essentially like an eternity from now until when that would supposedly become reality all across the cosmos. And so it's interesting to me that the two voids which more perfectly embody that idea are both hypothetical and so far flung from our current, this point in time, that they're essentially intangible to us, even though they could very well be the case. It could very well be the case that one of these two voids is the like ultimate destiny of everything that there is. Um, I guess this will be like a part two of the last video which I made. But I don't know. I don't know why I forgot about these two possible voids, because they're they're such perfect examples, perhaps more perfect examples than the ones that I spoke of previously. And then you have supervoids, which exist within the current universe, where there's essentially nothing in them aside from random star, like maybe a random star here or there, maybe a black hole, but those are dead, not dead, but they're black bodies. They're invisible essentially in a deep void like that, and then maybe a scattering of galaxies on the edges. Maybe there's like a small filament of small galaxies in the middle, but it's mostly just empty space. Um, and so I guess that'll be the sixth version, or the sixth iteration of a void, between these two sort of episodes on voids. Hmm. Yeah, so I guess this will work as a sort of um, bookend to the last video, and maybe also just like the first theme of this um, little channel that I have here, because I do want to move on to talk about not just what's, you know, beyond our reach, these infinite voids that I keep talking about, but also what's in them. But before I go to that point, I do want to talk about something that's been on my mind with regards to like an album that I've been really loving lately. Um, I've been utterly obsessed with Esoteric's The Maniacal Veil and other sort of funeral doom metal like Evoken's Antithesis of Light. They're very, dark, also, kind of a goth's, dream of really dark and depressing music, really bleak, but at the same time, they kind of put you in the headspace of being in like a perfect abyss, where you have nothing around you, you have only your thoughts with you to keep you company. And I guess if you found yourself in the situation where you were in one of these infinite voids, you know, it does also kind of, like, you're not put in you're not put in this position where you feel real fear, but that sort of idea is put in your head of what it would feel like, what the fear would be like, to be like in Evoken's Antithesis of Light. It's more in reference to death, so it goes more in line with the void that I was talking about in the previous video. But then with Esoteric, it's more with regard to like understanding. They talk a lot about what appears to me to be like ideas of absurdity, of sort of self-reflection, um, um, also introspection. It's very deep in that way. And I know that's really stereotypical on kind of surface level analysis, but like the lyrics strike me as being very introverted and self-analyzing. I mean, it's outwardly critical too, as a lot of metal usually is. But in this case, in like let's say Circle, which is one of my all-time favorites from them, or Abandonment, which is another one of my favorites from them, um, each of them have a very introspective sort of theme to them, especially in Circle. Well, I mean, the entire Maniacal Veil album has that same sort of feel to it, where it's um, sort of looking within oneself, and it does it in this way where you feel like you're in this sort of vacuum, um, where it's this singular entity that exists by themselves, um, and it's like it's devoid of anyone else. It's devoid of any other thing. Um, I mean, Circle does have these images of like, oh, not Circle. Other songs in the album, like Ignodium per Ignodius, have like these images of like walking through fields, or just doing something mundane, but also being sort of um, waist deep or neck deep in these very um, inward looking thoughts. And I think that's part of why I've been so obsessed with the Maniacal Veil album, because it is a very inward looking album. And the way I'm going to make this tie back into the idea of a void is that I imagine that if you were given a chance to just temporarily find yourself within a void and just kind of exist there for a time, I imagine that that's what you would end up doing inevitably. Just, you'd be forced to be alone with your thoughts, to think not only about your situation, but about your view of the situation, about your thoughts with regard to the situation. Um, so I guess that's part of why I've been interested in wanting to make these videos with regard to voids. Um, because like these albums, and also like the isolation which a lot of people have been dealing with, including myself, makes you sort of um, engage in introspection, makes you kind of rethink your assumptions, makes you look at what you take for granted, all those sort of things where you like sort of analyze yourself. And with jobs being harder to find, life just being more difficult than it was before, and it wasn't that easy before, so it sort of throws everything up in the air even more so than beforehand. And then you have people dying, and you have the ever looming threat of potential death and sickness and joblessness and homelessness. All of these really, you know, all of these really um, depressing ideas, or these depressing possibilities that loom over you. Meanwhile, you're in a state of isolation, as many of us have been throughout the year. And so, I guess this is me sort of expressing that a little bit and trying to put it into words and just get those feelings out a little bit, because I know we've all wanted to express them in one form or another. And I guess this has been my way of dealing with it. But yeah, it's just to imagine that you're out there, you're somehow teleported to the future, and it happens to be the future where everything is, you know, scattered, or everything has essentially lost all heat, and all you're left with is endless darkness, endless nothingness. I mean, I imagine it would, you know, it would be the closest thing you could come to it would be the closest thing that you could experience that resembled death, without just being asleep. But when you're sleeping, you're experiencing your own subconscious thoughts being kind of relayed back to you in a way, like if you could interpret it that way. But to be transported to a realm of pure nothingness, I mean, what is death but nothingness, in terms of your existence, your being? And so it's almost like with these albums, I get to sort of imagine that for a little while. You get to sort of detach from reality and just kind of inhabit this empty space for a time. Like I can only imagine being in that infinite void and listening to one of these albums and just just having that experience. It's probably why I'd love to um, have some time within a what are they called again? Sensory deprivation tanks. I would love to do that, just to sort of zone everything out for a little time, just to see what it's like. And like, I know this could probably be just a form of escapism, and I know I'm guilty of finding forms of escape, and I imagine a lot of us are, but it doesn't excuse it, You should be trying to better yourself, find ways of improving your life situation, and working towards something that benefits you, the people around you. But when you have those, you know, I imagine when you have those moments where you just want to sort of kind of check out for a little while, just relax. I guess for me, that would be my form of relaxation. Just infinite nothingness for a little while and seeing where my mind takes me. And so I guess that's another reason why I've been sort of fascinated with these concepts of these different these different sorts of voids. And so, yeah. So before this video gets any longer and this becomes unbearable to watch, I'm going to stop it here. And hopefully this will be the last in my, videos on the void. And while I do have like a lot of opinions on politics, I'm trying not to express them here too much so that it doesn't become just a political channel. I write enough on like Facebook and Twitter to, suffice. I think the next video I'll do might either be with relation to music or with relation to like astrophysics or astronomy in a more sort of concrete sense. But yeah, thank you to anyone who watches this eventually, I guess, maybe. And I hope you have a great night or a great day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. The way um, Jim Carrey said in The Truman Show. And, well, live your best life. I don't know.